Russo-Ukrainian War has been ongoing between Russia and Ukraine since February 2014. Hostilities were initiated by Russia shortly after Ukraine's revolution of dignity and were focused on political status of Crimea and the Donbas, which remain internationally recognized as part of Ukraine. Incursions into Ukrainian territory culminated in Russia's annexation of Crimea, following shortly afterwards by the beginning of the war in Donbas between Russia-backed separatists and Ukrainian state forces. Fighting for the first 8 years of the conflict also included naval incidents, cyber warfare, and heightened political tension. Throughout 2021, bilateral tensions rose due to a Russian military buildup surrounding Ukrainian territory, and on the 24th of February 2022, the conflict saw a major escalation as Russia invaded mainland Ukraine. On the 22nd of February 2014, Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych was ousted from office as a result of the Euromaidan and the Revolution of Dignity, which broke out after his decision to reject the European Union-Ukraine Association Agreement and instead pursue closer ties with Russia and the Eurasian Economic Union. Shortly after Yanukovych's overthrow and exile to Russia, Ukraine's eastern and southern region erupted with pro-Russian unrest. Simultaneously, unmarked Russian troops moved into Ukraine's Crimea and took control of strategic positions and infrastructure, including the Crimean parliament, on the 27th of February 2014. On the 16th of March 2014, Russia organized the internationally unrecognized Crimean status referendum, the outcome of which was in favor of Crimea coming under Russian sovereignty. Russia annexed Crimea in its entirety 2 days after the referendum was held. In April 2014, Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine proclaimed the establishment of the Donetsk People's Republic and the Luhansk People's Republic with support from Russia in the form of political figures, special forces, and deniable military advisors. In August 2014, a large convoy of unmarked Russian military vehicles crossed the Russia-Ukraine border and entered the Donetsk outpost. In February 2015, Minsk II was signed by both Russia and Ukraine as part of larger bilateral agreement to end the conflict, but a number of disputes prevented cooperative measures from being fully implemented. The war in Donbas eventually settled into a static conflict between Ukraine and the two Russia-backed puppet states, with multiple resolution attempts failing to result in the maintenance of a ceasefire. By 2019, 7% of Ukraine had been designated by Ukrainian government as being temporarily occupied by Russia. From early 2021 into the first month of 2022, Russia built up a massive military presence surrounding Ukraine, including from within neighboring Belarus. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, accused Russia of readying for an invasion of Ukrainian mainland, which the Russian government denied. As tensions rose over the build-up, Russian President Vladimir Putin criticized the enlargement of NATO and demanded that Ukraine be barred from ever joining the military alliance. He only expressed Russian irredentist views and questioned Ukraine's right to exist, falsely stating that the Ukrainian state was established by Vladimir Lenin under the Soviet Union. On the 21st of February 2022, Russia officially recognized the Donetsk People's Republic and the Luhansk People's Republic and openly sent Russian troops into Ukrainian separatist-controlled territories. 3 days later, Putin appeared on a televised broadcast and announced the beginning of a special military operation in Ukraine, signaling the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of the Ukrainian mainland. As the Russian military moved into eastern and southern Ukraine and also into northern Ukraine from Belarus, the 2022 Russian invasion was heavily condemned by much of the international community, with many countries and organizations accusing Russia of having grossly violated both Ukrainian sovereignty and international law. International sanctions against Russia, which has been imposed in some form by various countries since 2014, were ramped up in February 2022. At the onset of the conflict, Russia had roughly 12,000 military personnel in the Black Sea Fleet in several locations in the Crimean Peninsula. In 2005, a dispute broke out over control of the Sarge Cape lighthouse near Yalta and a number of other beacons. Russian presence was allowed by the Basing and Transit Agreement with Ukraine. Under the agreement, the Russian military in Crimea was contained to a maximum of 25,000 troops, required to respect the sovereignty of Ukraine, honor its legislation, and to not interfere in the international affair of the country, and to show her military identification cards when crossing the international border. According to the Regional Treaty on the Division of the Soviet Black Sea Fleet signed in 1997, Russia was allowed to have its military bases in Crimea until 2017, after which it would evacuate all military units, including its portion of the Black Sea Fleet, out of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and Sevastopol. On the 21st of April 2010, former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych signed a new deal known as the Kharkiv Pact to resolve the 2009 Russia-Ukraine gas dispute. It extended the stay to 2042 with an option to renew. On the 20th of February 2014, Russia began to annexation of Crimea. On the 22nd and 23rd February, Russian troops and special forces began moving into Crimea through Novorossiysk. On the 27th of February, Russian forces without insignias began their advance into the Crimean Peninsula. They took strategic positions and captured the Crimean parliament, raising a Russian flag. Security checkposts isolated the Crimean Peninsula for the rest of Ukraine and restricted movement within the territory. On the 1st of March, the Russian legislature approved the use of armed forces, leading to an influx of Russian troops and military hardware into the peninsula. On the 15th of April, the Ukrainian parliament declared Crimea a territory temporarily occupied by Russia. After the annexation, the Russian government increased its military presence in the region and made nuclear threats. Putin said that a Russian military task force will be established in Crimea. In November, NATO stated that it believed Russia was deploying nuclear-capable weapons to Crimea. Between 2015 and 2022, the war settled into a stalemate with few changes in territorial control. The control was marked by artillery duels, special forces operation, and trench warfare. Hostilities never ceased for a substantial period of time, but continued at a low level despite repeated attempts at ceasefire. Despite this, the area remained a war zone with dozens of soldiers and civilians killed each month. In 2017, on average, one Ukrainian soldier died in combat every 3 days, with an estimated 6,000 Russians and 40,000 separatist troops in the region. Between 2014 and 2022, the start of the conflict, there were 29 ceasefires, each intended to remain in force indefinitely. However, none of them have stopped the violence. In August 2016, the Ukrainian intelligence service, the SBU, published telephone intercepts from 2014 of Russian presidential advisor and other people in which they discussed covert funding of pro-Russian activities in eastern Ukraine, the occupation of administration buildings, and other actions that triggered the conflict. In 2017, Ukraine appealed to a court of arbitration over the use of the strait. By 2018, Russia had built a bridge over the strait, limiting the size of ships that could pass through, imposed new regulations, and repeatedly detained Ukrainian vessels. More than 110 Ukrainian soldiers were killed in the conflict in 2019. In May 2019, newly elected Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky took office promising to end the war in Donbas. In December 2019, Ukraine and pro-Russia separatists began swapping prisoners of war. Around 200 prisoners were exchanged on the 29th of December 2019. According to Ukrainian authorities, 50 Ukrainian soldiers were killed in 2020. Since 2019, Russia has issued over 650,000 internal Russian passports to Ukrainians. From March to April 2021, Russia commenced a major military build-up near the border, followed by the second build-up between October 2021 to February 2022 in Russia and Belarus. Throughout, the Russian government repeatedly denied it had plans to attack Ukraine. In early December 2021, following Russia's denial, the US released intelligence of Russian invasion plans, including satellite photographs showing Russian troops and equipment near the border. The intelligence reported a Russian list of key sites and individuals to be killed or neutralized. The US released multiple reports that accurately predicted the invasion plans. The 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine began on the morning of the 24th February when Putin announced a special military operation to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. Minutes later, missiles and airstrikes hit across Ukraine, including Kyiv, shortly followed by a large ground invasion along multiple fronts. Zelensky declared martial law and a general mobilization of all male Ukrainian citizens between the age of 18 and 60 who were banned from leaving the country. Russian attacks were initially launched on a northern front from Belarus towards Kyiv, a northeastern front towards Kharkiv, a southern front from Crimea, and a southeastern front from Luhansk and Donetsk. In the northern front, amidst heavy losses of strong Ukrainian resistance surrounding Kyiv, Russia's advance stalled in March, and by April, its troops retreated. On the 8th of April, Russia placed its forces in southern and eastern Ukraine under the command of General Alexander Donnikov, and some units withdrawn from the north were redeployed to the Donbas. On the 19th of April, Russia launched a renewed attack across a 50-kilometer-long front extending from Kharkiv to Donetsk and Luhansk. By the 13th of May, a Ukraine counter-offensive and driven back Russian force near Kharkiv. By the 20th of May, Mariupol fell to Russian troops following a prolonged siege at the Azovstal steel works. Russian forces continue to bomb both military and civilian targets far from the front line. Ukrainian forces launched counter-offensives in the south in August and in the northeast in September. The invasion was internationally condemned as a war of aggression. A United Nations General Assembly resolution demanded a full withdrawal of Russian troops. The International Court of Justice ordered Russia to suspend military operations, and the Council of Europe expelled Russia. Many countries imposed new sanctions which affected the economies of Russia and the world, and provided humanitarian and military aid to Ukraine. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to CrafrikMediaTV for more informative content. Turn on the notification bell so as to be notified each time we upload fresh content.